Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. Lately, I've been thinking about something that kind of keeps coming up in the whole BDSM, sex education space that we all kind of inhabit. What are we actually learning here? And more importantly, who's benefiting from it? There's a lot of people stepping into roles as educators, coaches, even experts, and it's really easy to assume that we're being given valuable knowledge, but at what point does education shift from being about real learning to just another business model? And when does it stop empowering and start exploiting? When does coaching start looking a little too much like therapy without the, transparency and border crossing? And how do we recognize when we're being sold unnecessary complexity rather than some sort of actual insight? And that's what we're going to explore today. First, I want to look at the business of education inside of BDSM. Right now, we already know inside of the places around the world, education has moved more out of learning to becoming about business. We see this at universities and private institutions all over the world. Are we actually really learning anything, or are we just being sold a business model? In other words, a lot of places that are accredited, so that means whatever you earn, if you're getting a degree or anything like that. When I went to school, went down to Georgia State and other universities, my master's programs, all of those come with degrees. Right? They're not just a certification. They're not a weekend course where somebody printed something up on their computer to make it look pretty. So this is the thing. We need to take a look here at how this education in BDSM is evolving and when it stops being about learning and it starts being about making money for these people. Now, first, I want to say this. There's nothing wrong with paying for education. Good teachers and well-researched resources and structured learning experiences have real value, and professionals deserve to be compensated for their expertise. I have argued this in the past, but what happens when that focus shifts, when education becomes really about business first and learning tools second? And that's the reality of what we're really facing today, especially the more I'm starting to see this. More and more people are stepping into these roles as quote-unquote educators and coaches and researchers. First off, BDSM is subjective. Now, there is outside qualified and quantitative data about our lifestyle. However, those are actual researchers or medical doctors or clinical psychologists or psychiatrists that are actually looking into this. This isn't, I've been doing this for, 15 years and I know more than everybody. No, what you're teaching people is subjective. It's your opinion and it's what you like. So I don't call people a kink educator. You're a kink demonstrator. You're demonstrating your version of kink. And if people want to buy into that, that's fine. But we should be clear on what we're selling. And more as all of these people are doing this, some, are really deeply experienced, great, they're passionate, that's fine, and they might be genuinely invested in helping others grow, but the others, that's where we run into the problem. These people are really good at marketing, and I see this a lot with dominatrixes and others, and that's where things start to get a little bit murky, even some of these organizations that are running around. And it's, because in a space like BDSM where people are already working through layers of shame and trauma and misinformation, it's easy to position yourself as an expert. It's easy to package confidence as competence. And when you have a vulnerable audience, people who are looking for answers, they're looking for validation, they're looking for guidance, you suddenly have a market for education that isn't always about what real knowledge is. And that's where all of these pseudo titles start showing up. You'll see people, and they're quite easy to find inside of the entire lifestyle and on social media platforms all over the place. They'll call themselves certified sexologists or trauma-informed coaches or consent experts. Now, all of these titles sound completely impressive, but let me tell you, they give the illusion of authority. And here's the real thing. There's no such standardized regulation behind a lot of them. There's no governing body that ensures these people are qualified, that they're ethical, or even trained to handle the topics that they're teaching. And that's where the problem lies. right? And yet, these same people will charge you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for quote unquote coaching, training, or certifications of their own. And guess what? There's nothing behind it. They're going to sell you the hype. Become this, and you'll make a six-figure income. That's a marketing scheme, and it's like basic psychology. It creates urgency, creates need, especially when you're down. Oh, I can just do this and I can become certified. And guess what? But your certification doesn't hold anything. You can look up certifications, for example, with the U.S. Department of Education, and see if those places that they're working with are accredited by, for example, in this case, the U.S. government, or maybe the UK government, or anybody else. If they're not, that means they're self-regulated. That means they're a business. They're a private institution. And that means they're for profit. That doesn't mean they're doing it out of altruism for the goodness of their heart. They're doing it to make money. And the only other way that they make more money is by bringing more people in. It's like a pyramid scheme to me. And I'm not naming any names here. It's really not hard to find these people and look at what they're saying. But they shove their titles in your face to make them sound like they're legitimate or have authority. And that's the real problem. And they start keeping people in this loop of paying for more than actually walking away with informed. You'll actually think, God, I went to that class and it was so awesome. I learned so much. And then you reflect back. What did you actually learn? You didn't learn anything. They told you a couple of keywords, and then they create the urgency. If you want to get to the next level, you got to buy this package, right? Hey, I'm working with all these content creators, and I'm designing something especially for the next 10 people. And we get in, we want to buy it because we're compulsive and we're impulsive, and we need to feel like we're a part of something, especially when it's urgent. And these red flags in this education and coaching are really starting to come out to me. And this is why I decided to do this. And I've actually wanted to do this show for a couple of weeks. Because we need to recognize when someone is genuinely trying to educate and when they're just selling us something that's unneeded. Now, you see this on platforms like Instagram or Fetlife or fetish.com. You'll see people that are just putting out information. They're not asking you to pay for anything. And I do this all the time. I'm going to be very transparent here. I write about trauma. I have provided free worksheets. They are available for free. You can download directly from my website. That's a free resource on different varied topics, from vetting to your self-regulation to negotiation tactics between people, right? I'm not asking you for anything. Now, I do have a link there because my time costs money. If you want to help, great. If you don't, just like with my show, you don't have to sponsor it. You don't have to give me anything, and I'm not demanding anything you do. I'm not telling you, pray to your God here and give me anything, because I'm not asking you for that. I'm not doing this for that. I'm doing it so I can help, because this community for the last 26 years has given me a lot. But a lot of these people are using this to exploit. And this is where some of these warning signs come in. Some of these red flags that tell us, hey, are we learning or are we just being kept on the hook? And there are a few key warning signs that help us spot the significant difference between that education and something that's being packaged and, to keep people paying for. And one of the biggest red flags here is someone is selling your certifications that sound totally official, but they're not. Board certified, I'm a certified BDSM educator. According to who? There's no governing body. That's not accredited by anyone. We can't even, in the community, we can't even agree what the acronym stands for, let alone certify anybody. I'm a trauma-informed coach. This one is the biggest red flag to me ever. You're not anything. You shouldn't be talking to people unless you are a therapist or a clinician or a psychiatrist, hell, even your doctor. But you shouldn't be going to someone because they spent 2 hours in a class to understand what trauma. That doesn't even scratch the surface about trauma. Or my other favorite one that I've started seeing, board certified sexologist. Guess what? there's more accreditation for Le Cordon Bleu, and that's not a dig, a culinary academy, and there's no accreditation in the US for that. None. Now, you can become a sexologist or a sex therapist, but there are other regulations that are involved. You'll have to have your master's or your PhD, yes, and then you can get that. But anyone in, for example, in quite a few countries can just call themselves a sexologist. You can't be a sex therapist, but you're a sexologist. That doesn't really mean anything. It's just a cool sounding title. It doesn't mean anything. So many of these credentials, they're not backed by any recognized body, but their own private institution. And these places regulate themselves. That means there's no oversight to ensure the quality, their ethics, or even their basic competency. And yet, these same credentials are marketed as if they carry any type of weight. You know what? I've got a ton of letters behind my name. And people ask me, why don't you put them? Because I don't bog that down. I have a lot of people that I've worked with in psychology over the years, and they've told me, you put all these acronyms and stuff up for people, no one cares. No one cares. If you would have met me a long time ago, I had MA in this, and my, MA was like MA, and then my PSY for my master's in psychology. I put all that stuff there. No one cared. No one read it. And you know what? That stuff costs me space on my website. It's about cost. So I started taking things out that nobody read anyway. And I don't need to, there's not a lot of, it's about your work ethic and where you are from. If I go to the Rocco School of Typing and Sexology, and that's my certification, you might want to start questioning that, But places like USC, NYU, Victoria University, all of these accredited places that have and carry weight, that's what you're looking for. Now, I'm not saying that everyone using these titles is being deceptive, but what it does mean is we as consumers need to ask better questions. We need to, who verifies their work? If it's a self-governing body, well, that doesn't mean anything. That just means, cool, I learned this from you, that you created this. So it didn't do anything, right? What actual training are you having? Are they learning from someone, or they're just paying for the title? And most of these titles are pay to play. You can accomplish them in a couple of months. When I was getting my master's, I was in school for 3 years. And that's because I was taking other things. But then there's the real issue of coaching that looks like therapy. And this is what started catching my attention, because that isn't. Coaching isn't therapy at all. Now, I'm not saying coaching isn't valuable. It's got a lot of valuable takeaways. It can help with your personal growth, your communication skills, navigating some relationship stuff, helping you build confidence, maybe helping you get organized. But guess what it isn't? It's not therapy. And some people, especially on places like in social media, Fetish or Instagram, or especially Fetlife, they're blurring that line. And I have called sometimes these people out. Because when you offer a service that mimics therapy, and you don't have the qualifications to back this up, you're going to start doing some real harm. You're unethical. You shouldn't be doing it. You'll see things, let's heal your trauma, or my favorite, guidance on mental health concerns like anxiety or depression. They're going to give you stuff like journaling exercises, emotional processing, right? All things that require actual training with a board-certified clinician, right? And the danger here is if someone is struggling with real trauma, they may believe they're getting help, when in reality, they're working with someone who has no qualifications to handle something serious like this mental health concern. And unlike a therapist, there's no professional training board to hold them accountable if something goes wrong. Guess what? They just brush it off. And I've seen an instance where they brush it off. Oh, they didn't understand my training technique. They were having a problem. And they just dismiss it and move on to the next person. But we don't hold them accountable. No one seems to care. And here's another red flag. This whole one-size-fits-all course model. Ever notice how some of these educators don't just offer one course on a topic? They offer, 12 on the same thing? Consent, we know, is one of the most basic concepts inside of BDSM. But instead of focusing on maybe teaching core principles that apply to everyone, They break down the same topic into these hyper-specific segments for all of these different groups, turning what should be something straightforward into a never-ending lineup of workshop after workshop, and obviously at extremely inflated prices. $20, $30, $40, $80. And I've looked at the numbers on a couple of these things. There's this one place that was offering, God, I don't know, they had 15 courses within 6 weeks. Their average price was well over $50. On average, if I saw, give or take, I'm going to just say the average was about 20 people per class. With all the classes they had, they were scooping up, and here's where the numbers start to matter, $12,000 for a 1 hour, 2 hour course. And all they're doing is talking. They're talking actually for about 30 minutes, and then they get you involved in a discussion. So they're actually not even teaching you really anything. And then they go, cool, now you understand about consent. Now you understand about trauma, and you can go out and deal with these things. You shouldn't talk to anybody. If they're having a trauma-related episode inside of a dungeon, you can comfort them and help them get where they need to be, but you shouldn't be engaging like you're their therapist. Absolutely, 100%, you don't do that. And they're setting these people up. And if you take the math, and I started looking at these people, I've looked at all these, come in and I'll regulate your profile for you and I'll do something in depth for you. These people are raking in millions of dollars per year doing this. Now, the people I looked at, I don't know, probably about a dozen. And there's far more of these, and I'm going to call them what they are. They're grifters. I'm looking at these people, and I'm seeing you, and I hope you know I'm speaking about you, but I'm looking at you're charging them, you're upselling, and I'm going to get to that too. You're taking all of these classes and courses and doing all this unethical stuff, and then you're upselling them because you're creating that urgency, that need. And all of these things, all of these experiences, great, they matter. And at a certain point, you have to start asking yourself, are we being taught anything new? Or are we just getting the same repackaged material to sell more classes with a word or two variants because they want to change it because now we've realized there's somebody else we didn't mention? And then they make you feel guilty for not taking the class. And my favorite one, and I saw this recently by, 4 or 5 different people. Oh, hey, come do my research thing for me, right? Come click on this because I'm conducting research. According to who? It doesn't prove anything. You clicking on, when somebody claims to be a researcher and what they're actually really done, they're collecting opinions through an online survey. First off, you don't have any idea what they're doing with your information. If you give any personal stuff like web addresses or your emails or your names, they're collecting data on you. What are they doing with it? What are their ethics behind it? How are they disseminating the information? All valuable questions. Is there a governing body that they got okay to conduct the research from? No, they just claim they want to do it. Awesome. Then you do it at your own risk. I don't partake in anything unless I know it's done by a body. And even then, sometimes I don't have the time. But I've worked with universities that do different studies for different things in psychology, and I'll partake in it because I want to answer somebody's question if it's in something relevant for me. But at the end of the day, you need to understand a survey is not research. The real research follows these ethical guidelines. It's peer-reviewed. It's got academic standards. But in an unregulated space like social media, if they're collecting anonymous responses and they're drawing conclusions and then they sell their findings as driven data, education, you're in trouble. And you need to ask them, hey, if you're taking all this information, are you publishing it? Is somebody going to review it? Are you following any guidelines? They're going to get stuck because the second you start asking these questions, they don't have any real answers because it's not research, it's marketing. And here's the biggest red flag I've seen. They sell you secrets that keep you paying. You'll see stuff. This is, part 1 of a 5-part series, except each part is sold separately for a much higher fee. And then they'll tell you stuff like, hey, you need this advanced course to truly understand, but you know what? You're not ready for that advanced course yet until you sign up for my coaching package first. The next thing you know, over the course of 6 months, they've just bilked you out of $5,000. For what? You could have gone down to a dungeon, a munch, and picked up a couple of books and probably learned more than they did. Real education should empower people to learn and grow. It shouldn't be structured in a way that keeps people dependent on that educator, like a drug or like a cult leader. You shouldn't be dependent on that coach and this whole never-ending series of expensive courses. These are just a few of the biggest red flags that I see, and while some of this might seem harmless at first, the reality is that when people believe that they've been properly trained or they can heal in a safe place, they're actually being misled, and it creates a lot of harm. And trust me when I say that, I read on social media the other day, 3-4 years ago, this person made a post on Twitter, or now X, and they claimed, I don't know, it was something like 7 or 9 therapists. They're so happy because they're now working with 7 or 9 new different clients that therapists referred them to. This board certified sexologist. I wouldn't refer my dog for trauma to a sexologist. It wouldn't happen anywhere on this planet. They're not trained. They're not therapists. They don't have the qualifications. They're self-certified. But it sounds like it gives credence. It's false advertising. It's lying. And it's dangerous. So what's the real harm? You might be asking me, hey, what's it matter? I feel like they're helping me. Well, you know what? Some of you are going to tell me, hey, if people want to spend their money on stuff, courses, or hire somebody who's unqualified, that's their choice. But the problem isn't just what you're being sold. It's what happens when people believe the information, especially when it's bad. And when education stops being about learning and starts being about profit, we end up with misinformation, exploitation, and real harm. Now, let's break that down a little bit. First off, BDSM is subjective. So how can someone be an authority in it? I'm not. Why do you think I still go to these, go to demonstrations? Because I love the lifestyle and I love watching somebody teaching me something new. I'm going to watch, in the coming weeks, or coming couple of months, some demonstrations on fire play because, I haven't done it in a long time. And I want to watch somebody that's all they do. I want to watch it happen, right? All of what we do in this lifestyle, though, just because I'm going to watch that person, it's still subjective because he's going to be teaching something that he does. But there's other people who, do fire play that do it differently. And that's okay. Because it's subjective. It's not regulated. And because there's not a right way to do things, there's no we have no universally agreed upon rules. There's no standardized practices here. There's no certification that makes someone an objective expert in kink because kink is subjective. BDSM is subjective. There is no facts that support the things that we do in here. I'm not talking about why we're here, and I'm not talking the emotional and psychological stuff. Don't bring that in. I am talking about how you're spanking someone. There is no governing body that tells us to do these things. And just because something works for one person, it might not work for somebody else. But a lot of these experts or educators or coaches present all of their opinions as fact. They speak in absolutes. Dominance always should do this. No, that's not true. If you're not using contracts, you're doing it wrong. 100% not true, right? This is the only way power exchange should work. Not true. Power exchange is there's a very core basic, right? BDSM, for a dynamic to exist, there must be TPE, total power exchange. Now, what that looks like to you, that's going to be decided upon. But that's the core. That's it. Beyond that, good luck. Start figuring it out. You design your book of education, what works for you. But that's the core of it. But BDSM here isn't a religion with sacred texts. It's a highly individualized experience for all of us. Legitimate educators understand this. Instead of they don't push rigid frameworks. They encourage you to explore and teach people how to critically think for themselves. And you should be going out there and discovering what works for you than, forcing somebody into a mold. And I tell people that all the time. Go and read multiple places, even places that I don't necessarily agree with, just because you're going to enhance your perspective. You're going to get a broader range of opinions. Do it so you can figure out what works and doesn't work for you. But if somebody is presenting their opinion as law, you should stop you know, especially in these tell people to not question who they are, newcomers are going to be completely vulnerable to this because they're going to believe that these so-called rules are absolute, and they're going to ignore their instincts that, or force themselves into dynamics that don't actually fit for them, or learning or buying something that's probably not going to work. And when BDSM now becomes, this whole education becomes this dogmatic, thing rather than exploratory, it limits our growth, and it leads people to feeling stuck or makes them want to quit altogether. And here's another problem with all of this. People think they're more educated than they actually are, right? Education should build confidence, and it should be humbling. But a major issue with these programs is that they give people confidence without real knowledge. I still go to continuing education classes. I still go to conferences because I want to learn from people in the world that know more about trauma than I do, so I can apply it to my own practice. Right? I'm humble about that. I don't know everything. I tell people, if I'm not the perfect fit for you, I'll help you find somebody who's better, because it's not about me. You're coming to me for healing. If I can't help you through that process, then we find you the person who can. But when I look at these people who are doing all this, they have all this confidence without any real knowledge, this is where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes into play. The less people know, the more they overestimate their expertise. Someone who takes a 2-hour workshop on trauma now believes they understand how to support a survivor, but in reality, they barely touched anything. As a matter of fact, if you learn anything, the first thing you should learn is if somebody's dealing with a traumatic incident at that moment, you don't get involved. You have to let them work through their coping mechanisms. You have to let, you can provide some comfort and support, but that's about it. You're not going in and trying to assess what's wrong with them, right? Or someone who completes some sort of weekend course on dynamics thinks they're qualified now to mentor others, even though they may lack any real-world experience. Or someone who gets a self-awarded certification, right? They assume now they're an authority. But all they did was pay for a title. They sat for a class for a couple of months that was self-regulated. They probably could have, got it for, $5.99 at 7-Eleven. I don't know. But it bothers me because, you see all these people, and it boggles my mind the amount of money that they're charging. I mean, they charge above therapy level prices. Some of these people are charging more money than it would cost you to visit with a psychiatrist. Now, psychiatrists are medical doctors and psychologists, and let me tell you, those people know their business. And yes, some of them are pricey, anywhere from about, on average, $450 US to some of the really good ones are up to about $800 or $1,000. But you would think these people who are calling themselves coaches or, certified sexologists, they're charging $1,000, $1,500 for what? For what? You need to question it, because all they're doing is it's misdirected trust. And all these unqualified people start working on these vulnerable individuals. And if you're struggling with shame or trauma or some sort of emotional wound, maybe in some sort of an assault, and you don't know the difference between therapy, coaching, and self-help, and you're just looking for relief, this is where this person comes in, and they're actually preying on you. Because I'll say, I'm going to offer you some healing through this coaching or journaling exercises. And you begin to trust them. But the problem with this, there's no training here. There's nothing. They got nothing. There's no way to screen for some sort of deeper health, mental health issue. Someone with an untreated PTSD might be encouraged to push past their boundaries when they actually need stability and safety. Maybe somebody who has attachment wounds might be told they just need to communicate better, when in reality their patterns run much deeper than surface level solutions. Or somebody who's struggling with depression, or maybe even some sort of ideation that they're going on, might receive advice that actually makes things worse. But these people believe, when people believe they're healing, but they truly aren't. It delays real recovery and reinforces the idea that quick fixes exist, right? I watched this recent thing on Netflix called Apple Cider Vinegar. Somebody who faked cancer and sold and built an entire health empire on a lie. But people bought into it because it was a quick fix. There's no quick fixes. right? I'm not knocking, first off, don't go, don't start sending me angry emails. I'm not knocking anything holistic, but nothing is a quick fix. You're not going to drink a drop of this special elixir and you're cured, because nothing works that way. Everything takes time. And the worst part of a lot of these things, when things don't improve, they blame themselves rather than realizing the person that was guiding them was never qualified to help them in the first place. And this is where money became the priority, and all their integrity went out the window. Education, like I said to you before, should empower people. It shouldn't keep you dependent on them. And all these people design their programs to keep you hooked. It's a scheme. And when someone profits off that confusion and insecurity, they have no reason to make things clear. They obfuscate things that. Sorry, there was a fly buzzing around. They make things very murky. You ask questions and you'll get, oh yeah, I'm kind of this, but not really, because I focused on this and not that. Well, that doesn't really tell you anything. We see public questions. So if somebody asks you a question and you have a following, people see that. I can see why people don't go into things, because if they start getting questioned, they're going to realize their whole business model is going to fall apart, right? These things, these people create just enough uncertainty to keep you coming back for more. And let's not ignore the whole fear-based marketing. If you don't take this course, you're never going to truly understand BDSM. If you don't work with me, you're going to put yourself and others at risk, or, your profile is going to scare people away. If you don't learn from me, you're going to always feel lost. It's not about education. This is typical manipulation. And this is where most of the vulnerable people are exploited. They buy into this because they believe, because you've got a social media presence and you look official, that you're the one that they should go to and work with. And all that really does is destroy trust in the real experts here. And that's the problem. That's the bigger problem, right? Now they're going to start looking at the long-term consequences towards legitimate educators or people who are presenters, right? Therapists or other professionals, because when people get burned by bad information and overpriced coaching, they stop trusting education altogether. They assume all people in BDSM that have these titles are trying to help. They're all grifters. They assume anybody just wants to take their money. They assume all research is fake. They don't listen to anything anymore. It creates distrust. It's real, right? They destroy anything that's evidence-based, right? Which becomes dangerous. And because all real BDSM education matters and real trauma work saves lives, they discount all this stuff and they work around it and they grift in these gray areas. And that's literally what it is. It's a grift. If you're not understanding what that means, it's a scam. They're scamming you. And how do you go about protecting yourselves? So where does this leave us? And Chris, why do you sound so impassioned? Because it pisses me off. Because I get people who've come to me who's worked with some idiotic coach who then allege that they can heal their trauma after you can't take trauma away. It doesn't go away. You can't. You teach people to learn to live with it. I'm a survivor of trauma. Multiple traumatic incidents throughout my life. You cannot heal me in your BS coaching sex certified course. You cannot do it. It's a total lie. As a matter of fact, if you could, report to people. But unfortunately, they also operate in a sphere which is completely unregulated, so they can say whatever the hell they want. So be careful when they said those things, right? Look for real world experience. Look for all that training. That doesn't mean that someone has to have a specific title, right? They don't have to have this exact little license, but they should be transparent about their backgrounds, their educations, and the limits of their expertise. There is a big difference between someone who has spent years studying, researching, or working hands-on, in the field with somebody who, somebody's buying a title over the course of a couple of months and creates some sort of program and markets themselves as an expert. I didn't start showing up and start writing until a few years ago because I was still working and learning. I didn't have a lot to say. I was learning from the experts who have worked in trauma field for 30, 40, 50 years and have all of this knowledge, and I'm trying to understand it and adapt to it. We have to look at all of those things. You also don't, please do not, BDSM is not therapy. There is people on the East Coast of the United States, there's one person in specific that's marketing and selling BDSM as therapy. That's the hugest red flag ever. Don't ever go to that person. They don't know what they're doing. And I've had a conversation with them. Terrified me what they're doing. So how do you really spot all these red flags? You start by asking tough questions. Are they teaching me something, or are they just selling me something? And a lot of these people are going to be really vague with their self-appointed titles that sound really impressive, but if you start digging, and it doesn't take much, it doesn't actually mean shit. Sorry, doesn't. You can get all offended and you can start coming after me, but I'm going to tell you, I hold up to scrutiny where you won't. And if someone calls them a sexologist, or they're a relationship guru, or they're a trauma healer, or there's some floating basket weaving, nature enthusiast that can, somehow heal your PTSD and relationship at the same time, run in the opposite direction, because they can't clearly explain how they're trained or what their experience is. And those are huge red flags. It's one thing to share knowledge. It's another thing to create a false sense of authority. And if the biggest thing I see with all these people, they constantly upsell you. Education should be about providing value, not keeping people dependent on what you are giving them. If someone is always pushing another paid course, and I'm not talking, look, I haven't done one for, like a year. I keep getting asked, but I put out stuff to the community because it's easier. I don't really have the time to teach courses. I have a busy practice and I work with veterans in the morning. I don't have time for that, but I do like to help. I'm not saying that it's not great for somebody to step in, but if they're just, cool, here's my class on consent on Monday, but you got to come in for the trauma information on Tuesday, come in, but you have to take rope safety on Wednesday, but if you don't work with me first, you can't take these courses. They're constantly creating a need for you to buy the crap that they're selling. They're not providing value, they're keeping you dependent. And all they deal with is absolutes. Everything is an absolute with them, right? If you want a real education to thrive, we need to start calling out all the differences in expertise between that and marketing, because there are some quality people out there who give to you. Yeah, some of them charge, and you know what? They're hell of a worth their time. But make sure that they're telling you, hey, this is just my view of it. Learn from broader scales. Take a look at the bigger movement. Because the moment that education stops being about learning and it becomes about a business, that doesn't benefit anybody. It's just the person who's cashing in on it. And that's where the real problem lies. And I'm going to keep, and it's not just me, other therapists, other people who are hurting they're going to reach out to real people that can help them, because they're going to come into these grifters and they're going to get swindled. And, it's unfortunate. But if you can start to at least question it now, if you see that they're going to give you a class on sex and, penile and clitoral stimulation and heal your trauma and cure your PTSD, and they're going to do that for, $500 in one session, my God, run. And trust me, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, because I read all this stuff this past week. Look, at the end of the day, this isn't about attacking educators, because I'm not doing that, because there's I'm going to state this, there's some really qualified people out there. I don't even have to agree with them all. There's some people I don't care for because of their attitudes or the way they do them, but some of the stuff that they teach, it's quality, right? But it is about all of us asking better questions. Are we actually learning something, or are we just being sold to? Is it education we're receiving that's helping us grow, learn, or is it just another way to keep us paying for their next course, the next session, or their next so-called certification? Real education should empower, not exploit us. It should challenge us to broaden our understanding and give us the tools to navigate our journey on our own. And when education becomes more about branding and influence and selling an image than anybody's actual knowledge, we have to ask ourselves, who's actually benefiting? And this is really why critical thinking matters here, because it's easy to be drawn in by the confidence and impressive sounding titles or well marketed courses, but confidence isn't competence. It's a slick brand that doesn't mean someone is qualified to teach. And the truth is, real expertise doesn't need to sell itself. It speaks for itself, right? In those people's convictions, when they're giving you, they're standing up or they're volunteering their time. I've gone and talked about relationships and consent and basic navigation skills in the beginning at dungeons or at events, and it doesn't matter where, because I've done it for free, because I'm not doing it because I want to make something from it. I'm doing it to help, because I think it's important and it's valuable, so people don't make mistakes and end up hating the lifestyle and blaming it for their problems. And all of this today and I have this quote actually on my profile, it brings me today to it sums it up nicely, by Thomas Sowell. And if you don't know who he is, look him up. When you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And that's the difference between real educators and opportunists. The people who actually care about education are going to challenge you, not just tell you what makes you feel good. They won't sell you easy answers or convince you that you need them to keep learning. Instead, they're going to give you the tools to think for yourself, to question everything and walk away with something real. So the next time someone presents themselves as a total expert, ask yourself, are they here to teach or are they here to sell? Because at that moment, when education stops being about my learning and it becomes about them profiting, that's not helping anybody except the person that's cashing in. Now, before I get going here, I want to thank everybody who's been supporting the show, who's been writing me, all of you people who are now newly listening. If you're following me on Spotify, please rate the show 5 stars so more people can find it, right? Go to your app. There's 3 little dots. Click rate the show, click 5 stars, hit submit, right? I don't charge for the show. I don't do anything. I do all this for free for now. I am looking for sponsors, so if there is somebody who'd like to sponsor the show, or if you'd subsequently like to help me keep doing this, been doing it for 4 years, there is a donation link on my profile. Please consider doing that. Any amount, big or small, doesn't really matter. It's all helpful. It keeps the show going, right? I appreciate all of that. And I appreciate your questions. I'm going to try to get to more of them in the future and a couple more shows. Now, before I get going, I want to say this. For a long time, I've been working behind the scenes on a really potentially huge interview. Right now, we're at the negotiation stage, and I'm waiting for confirmation. But I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm not trying to upsell you because there's nothing here to buy. I don't think anybody's going to be ready for who I'm going to sit down with. Now, that's the most I can say, and I know it's still cryptic because I'm just waiting on the email confirmation. When I get it, I'm hoping maybe this week, I'll let you all know. But I can tell you, in one sphere, it's probably the most influential influencer we've got that we can relate to. So that's about the only big hint I'm going to kind of drop on that. I do have something coming up with somebody that does the Saturday box. It's a young woman. I'm going to be interviewing her. That I'm going to be getting a discount for you all if you end up purchasing it. I'm going to let her come on and tell you all about that. I'm looking forward to talking with Emma here. I've got to set that up for the next couple of weeks. I've got some other interviews coming up. I'll keep you all posted, right? But let me know what you think about this. Or do you think I'm wrong? You think I'm crazy? Or do you understand where I'm coming from? Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay tuned.